What up, perps? Kid Copious. Back in effect. You know what we're doing here, man. Purple State Party. We're repping America, center, common sense. Love you all, man. It's got to be hard right now to be a Republican or a Democrat. I mean, both sides are playing to their extremes. So that's why you got to join me here in the middle, man. Become purple. And then that way, when the topics rise, you go, hey, not my party. I'm in the center. I'm fucking Purple State. This is for you, Purple Staters. Perps away! Right, so we're going to kick this off with, try to get some smiles on some faces here. Babylon B, take it away. 90% of traffic collisions linked to drivers taking pictures of cyber trucks. Those things are god-awful. Honestly, I'm shocked how many I see. The one big complaint I have is that whole back end, man. I just feel like it needs something, like a nice sick mural or something. Whatever. Maybe, what? They should integrate a TV screen into there so that they could broadcast sports scores. That would make traffic a lot better. See, I got fucking solutions here. I don't just bitch and complain. I offer up solutions. Put an LED screen back there. And then, of course, people are going to hack it and put porn on there. But that'll still be amusing, right? This one. Biden disappointed after a huge scoop of vanilla ice cream turns out to be Pope Francis. They're going to run with this guy. Like 86% of America now believes that he shouldn't run. And they're going to run with him or they're going to pull a switcheroo. I'm betting on the switcheroo. Oh, man. I can't believe America's gotten to this point. Biden versus Trump again. I mean, we had Clinton, Trump, we had Biden, Trump, and now Biden, Trump. Like, dude, I always say I'm a baseball announcer. I got to call that 3 strikes when we're out. It's time to just wipe the slate, and it's got to be 2 other people. Holy shit, man. So one of the top stories that I'm sure delighted a lot of people, Hunter Biden found guilty on charges in historic felony gun trial. I don't give a shit about the history, Honestly, I don't really think that this whole drug addict or even some felonies should disqualify you from owning a firearm. Not like they say right there, nonviolent offender. I don't think that what he did really constitutes a crime. I really don't. I mean, I try to be honest here. I don't like it. I'll fucking hate Hunter Biden, man. I know exactly who that dude is. And I'm not a big fan of that. And I'm not a big fan of those kind of restrictions on guns at all. It's one thing about mental health. I understand people who are tweakers and stuff like that probably shouldn't get a gun. But that's not what the Constitution says. I find it always funny when we talk about the Hunter Biden trial, because back, in July of last year, almost a year ago, they came up with a plea deal to basically get him off of his federal tax charges and these gun charges. And the deal fell apart because the judge was like, bros, this is way too soft. We can't accept this. So in September 5th, he's going to go to California for allegedly avoiding taxes. Again, this is one of those things where they talk about, the rich got to pay their fair share, blah, 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 blah. Well, let's see what happens. I think Hunter's going to get about as fair trial in California as Trump got in New York. Except flip-flop is going to be very supportive of this guy because they don't want to make their guy look bad. And that's really, that's one of the tenets of purple is that, if our guy looks bad, we have to say it. We can't just accept it because they're on our team. In sports, you see that all the time. You see cancerous players in the locker room who may be good, but they're dragging the team down. And you have to let those people go. That's how champions are born. You have to make the tough choices. But we'll see. The real crime in the Hunter Biden case, honestly, was the tossing out of the gun. It was thrown into a trash can that was retrieved by a homeless dude near a school. I mean, that to me is really what we should be focusing in on. You know, just like weed, I like to be a responsible weed smoker. I don't like to do it when I'm driving. I don't like to do it, before work or during work or when it's just fucking inappropriate, right? And I'm the same way with guns. You have to be responsible. You have to keep them locked up. You have to monitor who has access to them. And if people have access to them, then they need to know how they operate and how to operate them safely. That's the real crime. I don't really give a shit that he lied, okay? He got caught. It's the law. He should be punished. All right, fine, whatever. Bad law, but whatever. But the tossing of the gun by his girlfriend, wife, or beau, his brother's widow or whatever, or whoever it was, this dude, man, Hunter, he surrounds himself with some winners, doesn't he? But that's the real crime. Let's move on. White House equity requirements holding back EV charging station construction's internal documents show. So in 2021, the Biden administration pledged that they would build 500,000 electric vehicle chargers by 2030. 3 years later, they've built 7. And Buttigieg tries to say it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. Well, not really. I mean, it is just connecting a self-contained charger to an electrical grid and putting it in cement. I mean, it's not that difficult. In some areas, sure, it is, and that's one of the drawbacks of EVs is that there are areas in this country, lots of areas in this country, off-road, backwoods, crap like that, where it's going to be really hard to charge your vehicle, almost impossible. But one of the delays is because of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that try to make it all, everybody's got to get their piece of the pie. That's one of the biggest problems with diversity, is if you have too much diversity, right? You have too many ideas coming in, and you get too many people who are wedded to one point of view, and they're not going to change, and therefore you just keep going back and forth, and nothing ever gets done. Equity and inclusion, I don't know how that fits into it. And I understand when they're talking about diversity, they're not talking about the decision making. But the decision making part is coming from people who have these varying points of view where they're arguing sometimes really asinine positions, and it just delays the whole thing. Figure out where you need charging stations and build them. And then build the next one and the next one and the next one. It's not that hard. I do it in Minecraft. I don't start at the top and work my way down. No, you start at the bottom and you work your way up, okay? Start at A, go to B, go to C. Speaking of inclusion and equity, we have Russian warships off the coast of Cuba right now, which, 90 miles from Florida, so it's off our coast. As Russian warships threaten Florida coast, Biden responds decisively to ensure safety of all Pride murals. That is not a slam on the Pride movement, because if it was, I wouldn't feature it here. What it's a slam on is the prioritization of something like a Pride mural as a crosswalk. Personally, I'm just going to say it. I think crosswalks need to be crosswalks. That's it. They should be as easy to see as possible. There should be no distraction about them. This is a safety issue, and it's not because of the pride flag. I wouldn't want an American flag on crosswalks either. All right? Let's get this straight. But as we have this growing threat of Russia right now, who we're already engaged in a proxy war with in Ukraine, we need to focus on America. There you go, America. It's the first thing that I say I rep. Because if America falls, none of the DEI crap is going to matter. All right? None of the fast food prices are going to matter. None of the blah-de-blah-de-blah is going to matter. Now, maybe it's a far reach to say that Russia will take us over. To stretch. Okay? But even the greatest empires, all of them, fell. Rome fell, right? Right? They fell, They The Egyptians, they fell. And the way it happens is exactly what we're going through right now. Bad priorities. Biden issues executive order limiting border crossings to just 5,000 ISIS terrorists per day. This is in reference to, several ISIS terrorists enter the United States. This is from Fox Business. Hillary Vaughn was talking to Senator Alex Padilla of California. He's a Democrat, if you can't see it up there. So these 8 suspects were arrested over the past week in 3 different cities. And, of course, Padilla says that the Republicans should approve border legislation that was negotiated by a bipartisan group and includes some additional funding for the border. Some. Biden tore apart the border with his executive actions. He needs to put it back together. I think that's what the Republicans are saying. I don't think that we should buy into this whole idea that the Republicans are not doing anything about the border. I think that's just a red herring. So Padilla says, I don't think they're being welcomed, but to me, it's just a reminder that the Republicans need to stop opposing additional resources for more Border Patrol agents. Well, you tie that to other things. See, if you get the more Border Patrol agents, but you have to give up just simply legalizing all the people in the country, it's kind of a bad deal, don't you think? But staying on this particular thing. So the 8 individuals crossed into the border illegally, and there was no derogatory information that was initially flagged by Customs and Border. But after they were released, derogatory information was flagged, including the individuals' ties to ISIS. This is why we can't just simply let them come into the country, because they've been in the country long enough to have done something. You see? All they need is 24 hours, right? They don't even need 24 hours. So Vaughn asked, you don't think President Biden has any responsibility for the fact that terrorists are being allowed into the country? Padilla responds, the fact that they were identified and detained and we know where they are is them doing their job. What did I just say? They don't need much time to act. You see? You could come in. I mean, think about it. Let's just look at it like an international hitman. All right? He flies into America, takes out a couple people in LA, gets on a plane and disappears. It's the same thing that happens when you just simply allow people across the border. They could quickly, easily do what they came here to do and then leave. These guys could have done something, set something up, delivered something, and boom. It's not doing their job. And the biggest problem, and we've had this problem for decades, if not a century. Somehow we, the people, you and me, individuals who are just trying to live their lives, need to figure out a way to reject some of this propaganda that comes our way. Newsom says Oakland crime down 33%. So that's the headline, crime down 33% in Oakland. Except that 97% of car break-ins are not included in the report. Okay? So I can hear people saying, well, car break-ins aren't that important. No, but 97% of them were missed. So what else have they missed? Right? What it says here is that crime stats might be down due to data discrepancies, not real decreases. Oakland Police Department announced a decrease, right? Leading NBC Bay Area to investigate troubling undercounts in full crime reporting. In 1 month, where the Oakland PD said there was 30 break-ins, an analysis of the Crime Watch database found 30 break-ins per day. See, that means that this report is flawed. And even all the database, even the Crime Watch database, does not include unreported crime. And if people aren't charged, then there wasn't a crime, and blah, blah, blah. Like I've said many times, it's not the amount of crime, it's the type of crime. The rampant shoplifting, that just involves innocent civilians everywhere. Some of the violence that we're seeing, the random violence, the sexual assaults by homeless people that we're starting to see. We're starting to see the problem of having 100,000 homeless people in California. In response, the Oakland chapter of the NAACP, you notice you don't hear about them very often anymore. You know why? Because they're not extremists. All right? They demanded that city leaders declare a state of emergency on crime, end defunding of the police, and prosecute more people who commit crimes. If somebody commits a crime, they committed a crime. It's not about the color of their skin. It's not about their income levels. They committed a crime. It's pure and simple. And when we try to make it more than that, we run into trouble. Failed leadership, including the movement to defund the police, our district attorney's unwillingness to charge and prosecute people who murder and commit life-threatening serious crimes, and the proliferation of anti-police rhetoric have created a heyday for Oakland criminals. That's from the NAACP. Our 911 system does not work. Residents now know that help will not come when danger confronts them. And here in California, we have very strict laws on what we can and can't do about self-defense, what we can carry, how we can apply it. Here in California, if you're carrying anything more than pepper spray, they assume you're a criminal, which is just utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. You have to look at a government that distrusts its citizens. If you look at the shittiest countries on the face of the planet, all of the government officials fear the citizens and do everything to make sure that the citizens can't rise up. Biden has mentioned that many times. Oh, you're going to need more than an M16 to fight my F-15. Right? Reminding people, oh, you can't rise up. Who the fuck says that other than a scared dictator? And it's not just in Oakland. Analysts spot holes in FBI's data showing a big drop in major crimes. It was the dramatic headline, that Biden and other federal leaders touted this week. But immediately, analysts started questioning the data. And why? Why? The FBI's quarterly uniform crime report, which is, a conjunction of crime databases from around the country, showed that violent crime found 15%. Merrick Garland there, he called it a historic decline. Right, except that when you start looking into it, the FBI counted 46 homicides in New York City from January through March. But when you look at the NYPD's database, 82 homicides, a difference of 36, almost double. And that's where you get these phony baloney numbers. If you don't make sure that you have good, solid numbers, you're not going to have a good, solid result. And part of the problem is that the federal government wants the local police to report things a certain way. But the police forces have been defunded. So how are they going to get these statisticians? Right? See, Mr. Johnson, the guy who's talking about this here, he said that bigger police forces will hire civilians to be statisticians so officers don't lose their patrol duties. But how are the smaller police forces going to handle this when they have a shoestring budget? And one other point, the country averaged 18,000 homicides per year under Trump, 20,000 under Biden, making more than a 10% jump in homicides per year with the current president. The last 3 years have been 3 of the most violent years in American history, said Mr. Town, who was once the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama. I don't know, he says, if that's something to celebrate. Palestinian researchers discover startling correlation between holding hostages in your home and people shooting at you. This goes to the rescue of 4 of the Israeli hostages. And of course, the world is like, oh no, civilians died. Well, I want to tell you something. Terrorists are civilians. Terrorists are not soldiers. They are not part of some sort of unified army that protects a country. That's not what these people are. These people are terrorists. So as far as I'm concerned, every time you shoot one of them, it's a civilian. It's not a soldier. Gaza doesn't have a standing army. And of course, Gaza Health Ministry confirms 8 billion dead in Israeli hostage rescue. Again, we're going to take the terrorist word for it. The Gaza Health Ministry. What do you really believe? I mean, does anybody really buy that the Gaza Health Ministry is not just a bunch of fucking Hamas members? Come on. And this goes into it. The IDF's daring a rescue of 4 hostages, right? It should have ended the narrative that all Palestinians are victims because they were being kept in private homes, with civilians pointing out that the IDF was coming, civilians acting as lookouts. Yet instead of being outraged that Gazan families were holding Israelis captive, or even being happy that several hostages have finally been free, the international community condemned Israel for the civilian deaths caused by the raid. The UN was profoundly shocked. Like the author says here, I'm sure no one bothered to ask why UN agencies allowed Hamas to store weapons in UN facilities, or why the UN built them over tunnel shafts. The UN is complicit with Hamas, as far as I can see. I'm sorry, but that's what the evidence shows. But yeah, BBC and other legacy media outlets ran with the Hamas-run, there it is, Hamas-run Palestinian Ministry of Health that claimed 274 Palestinians had been killed. And this shithead on MSNBC, how many innocent Palestinians killed is acceptable to rescue Israeli hostages? Oh, this is simply black and white. There is no gray here. Okay, we're going to see why. We'll get a little more to that. Joseph Borrell, the UN's top diplomat, took to X to express his indignation. Reports from Gaza of another massacre of civilians are appalling. We condemn this in the strongest terms. The bloodbath must end immediately. Okay. That's up to Hamas. Hamas is the one who's not accepting terms. All right? What is so hard to see about that? The reports are there. They say it in their own words. It's not like we're making this shit up. Hamas is the one whose ultimate goal is to destroy Israel. They're the ones who don't want to lay down the arms. They're the ones who want to give back dead hostages for terrorists who are being held by Israel. The reaction to the operation was so inappropriate that satire site, the Babylon Bee, published an article hilariously entitled, Palestinian Researchers Discover Startling Correlation Between Holding Hostages in Your Home and People Shooting at You. Flashback. That's where this is coming from. This guy, Richard Goldberg, I'm not sure what FDD is. I can't be bothered. While Secretary of State Anthony Blinken travels across the Middle East talking about a two-state solution and a Palestinian state, the main impediment to such a scheme remains the same: a radicalized Palestinian population that supports terrorism against Israel instead of peacemaking. That's who's doing it here in America. Radicalized Muslims. Their parents were radicalized. We'll see it. 2020 study of 400 Palestinian school books found that children are being systematically taught to hate Jewish Israelis and violently resist a Jewish presence in Israel. It's how they were raised. They're on board. Jewish news service Middle East correspondent Josh Hastings summed it up great. The Palestinian people support Hamas. If they didn't, they would be turning in the leadership of Hamas to the Israelis. They would be putting the weapons that are in their homes out in the front and say, take them, we don't want them anymore. They support Hamas. The Palestinian people voted for Hamas. The Palestinian people are Hamas. Gaza journalist who wrote for Al Jazeera was holding 3 hostages in his home. Okay, I get it. It's Israel saying that, and we'll take it with a grain of salt. But from what I saw, he was. This one from the B. Biden asked why Europe didn't just arrest conservative candidates before election. The sleeping MAGA giant of Europe finally awakens, and the global left could not be more terrified. Make America great again is sweeping Europe. That's kind of weird. That's a strange way of putting it. Wouldn't it be like mega? Make Europe great again? I'm confused. But this shift to the left is starting to pendulum back to the middle again. Because Europe is not voting for these so-called progressives anymore. Like the media histrionically calls them the far right. But they walked away with some big victories. You know? Nationalist parties in Italy, Hungary, the Netherlands, Austria, Spain, and Belgium all won landmark victories. Some won in landslides. Any way you look at it, it's a massive win for the nationalists of the Western world against the globalist forces that despise them. Holy shit. I side with the nationalists, which is what the Nazi party ended up being. This is why we can't get the pendulum swinging to the extremes, folks. Liable. So on with this one. Kids avoid felony by defacing pride mural with Free Gaza skin marks. Yeah, that's kind of funny. But quite frankly, I don't think those kind of sentiments need to be echoed. We don't need to go around purposely defacing pride sidewalks or crosswalks. That's not what Purple is. Purple doesn't believe in defacing the pride murals, and they certainly don't believe in freeing Gaza. But that's the kind of confusion that these political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are facing right now. They've moved to the extreme. I know I say it a lot, but it's important to me. It's important to America to understand that these extremes are not the answers. The answers are purple. The answers come from the individual citizens out there. It comes from looking at things without a bias and making decisions based upon the best available information. That's what we need to do. More people should be out there saying this. Sometimes I feel like I'm a voice in the wind. You know what? I'm a tough motherfucker. I'll keep going. Keep copious. Purple State Party. So are you. Love one another. Be kind to people. Drink your water. Hug your mom and dad. Vote with your head and not your heart. And after you punch that ballot, dance it out.